Called the 20th century's Robinson, Polish traveler and writer Ferdynand Ossendowski traveled almost all of Inner Asia. He made very interesting observations, especially about Tibet, China, Mongolia, and Siberia. Ossendowski, the author of the book Beasts, Men, and Gods, also mentions a lost kingdom in his book. In the book, the author relates a very interesting memory he had as follows. The elders living on the banks of the Amil River told me, a tribe fleeing Genghis Khan had hidden in an underground city. Later, a hunter from the tribe reached the lost city through a door. When he returned, he told what he had seen, but the lamas cut out his tongue to stop him from speaking. Then the hunter returned to the hidden city, leaving only his memories. Ossendowski also described the conclusion he reached about the lost kingdom after his experiences as follows. More than 6,000 years ago, a great man went into the earth with his people and never came out again. Many people have been there and back, including Mughal Shah. Nobody knows where it is. There was no murder there. They were protected against evil. Knowledge flourished quietly, and they were not in danger of destruction. Millions live there now. Science is at its highest level. The ruler of the world reigns there. Protected by the Buddhists, lamas, and extremely mysterious beings living in the region, we will search together for this place that has never been found. Imagine a lost city, a kingdom that watches everything that happens in the world from afar. It is a place of enchanting beauty, full of riches and absolute knowledge, nestled in the snowy mountains like a protected circle. In the capital Kalapa, there is the Diamond Palace, where the ruler lives. In the palace, there are magic mirrors and skylights. The skylights are for observing the universe and life on other planets. The magic mirrors allow the king to monitor and intervene in distant events. Imagine that if this magical city were found, we could unravel all the secrets of the earth and even the universe. But there is one small problem. This place has been searched for centuries, but never found. The place we are talking about is called the City of Kings. The real name is Shambhala. What does a lost city have to do with the secrets of the universe, you might say? But the place we are talking about is much more than a normal city. Forget all the concepts of metropolis, city, town, and so on. There are wise and enlightened beings living in this city. If we find this city, we will be able to fully understand and solve our past, present, and future. And we will have unlimited access to all secrets. We will be able to access the pure source of knowledge and wisdom. We will understand how all the spiritual, mystical, and religious teachings we have learned so far came to be in their origins. In fact, if we find this city, with the knowledge we will learn here, we will be able to evolve as human beings to the levels of our superior, ancient ancestors and reach the source, the main center of knowledge. Sounds good, doesn't it? The place we're talking about is Shambhala, which is considered a secret country, a secret kingdom, which is believed to be located around Tibet and the Himalayas today. To understand this place, I think we first need to find an answer to the question, where did this lost city Shambhala come from? Shambhala was first mentioned in the Kalachakra Sutra, an Indian Mahayana Buddhist text written in the 8th century. According to the ancient scripture, Shambhala is a paradise in the north of Tibet. It is a land of peace and prosperity. The king of Shambhala is described as Kalki Avatar, also known as Maitreya. According to the ancient text, Maitreya is a Buddha and the guide who will bring peace, tranquility, and harmonious living to the whole world. Shambhala has a sacred place in Tibetan Buddhism. Many Tibetans believe that Shambhala is a real place. For many Tibetans, Shambhala represents hope and the path to liberation. According to many esoteric teachings, Shambhala promises people salvation. The way of life of Tibet and the Buddhists living in this region is also shaped according to these teachings. You can find detailed information in our documentary, Tibetan Buddhism. Shambhala also appears in the Kanjur and Tanjur narratives, the sacred books of Tibetan Buddhism. In the 11th century, ancient manuscripts mentioning Shambhala were translated from Sanskrit into Tibetan. Later, many monks, bards, yogis, and scholars from Tibet and Mongolia wrote various works about this sacred place. The writer James Hilton, in his book Lost Horizon, written in 1933, mentions this place as follows. A magical place in Asia, out of reach. Shambhala, or Shangri-La, is the name of a place where peace flourishes with beauty, where a modern society, far from evil eyes, lives together with traditions of love. A few years after James Hilton published his book Lost Horizon, the movie of the same name was released. The movie was nominated for 5 Oscars and won 2 Oscar awards. Of course, this helped to spread the legend of Shambhala. Countless articles, books, and movies have been written about this place. But perhaps the reason why Shambhala has become so popular around the world is Madame Blavatsky. Helena Petrovna Blavatsky's ideas and claims about Shambhala are contained in her book The Secret Doctrine. In her book, Madame Blavatsky referred to Shambhala mainly as a mystical and esoteric kingdom. Blavatsky described Shambhala as the center of high spiritual knowledge and secret teachings. She also spoke of this magical city as a place isolated from the physical world and accessible only to those with very advanced spiritual development. According to Blavatsky, our superior ancestors who existed on Earth still live in this lost kingdom. Shambhala is a concept that forms the basis of Blavatsky's theosophy. Theosophy is derived by combining the words God and knowledge. It is also a philosophy that considers the earth and everything in it as a whole and is generally based on esoteric knowledge from Eastern culture. According to this philosophy, it is believed that Shambhala guides the world for good and that everyone can reach Shambhala one day. Blavatsky's ideas about Shambhala have attracted the attention of many people. It is not known whether Shambhala actually exists, but Blavatsky's ideas have helped people to see the world and everything in it in a different way and to look for new meanings. On what basis do you think Helena Blavatsky made these claims? To understand everything better, let's first take a quick look at Blavatsky's extraordinary life story. Helena Petrovna Blavatsky, whose real name was Helena Petrovna von Hahn. On August 12, 1831, she was born in the city of Teterinoslav, then part of the Russian Empire, in present-day Dnipropetrovsk, Ukraine. Her father was Colonel Peter Alexeyevich, an aristocrat of German origin, and her mother was Helene Andreevna Hahn, a prominent figure in the feminist movement of the 19th century, who wrote novels and articles under the pseudonym Zenaida Arva. Madame Blavatsky, one of the most important figures of modern occultist thought, spent most of her life traveling all over the world. Throughout her life, she pursued esoteric and occult knowledge and pioneered the spiritist and spiritualist movement of her time. Blavatsky claimed that since childhood, she had a mentor who appeared to her in astral form and taught her. Her teacher was allegedly Master Mahatma Maurya. At the age of 11, Helena Petrovna Blavatsky lost her mother and moved into her grandfather's house and began to live there. At the age of 17, she married Nikifor Vasilyevich Blavatsky, the much older governor of Tbilisi. The interesting thing is that she wanted this marriage. Helena thought that this early marriage would give her more freedom. However, nothing went as she planned, and Blavatsky left her husband and ran away from home, even though she had only been married for 3 months and allegedly went to Istanbul. As the capital of the Ottoman Empire at the time, Istanbul was an important center where East-West cultures merged and had a rich historical and cultural diversity that would contribute to Blavatsky's spiritual quest. Therefore, Blavatsky's reason for being in this city was that she believed that her observations would contribute to her mystical and occult knowledge. According to the allegations, young Helena experienced interesting events during her days in Istanbul. Staying in a boarding house, Helena looked for solutions as her money was running low. Since she was a good horse rider, she started to perform riding shows in circuses. But this adventure did not end very well either. Because one day, while performing in the circus again, Helena tripped and fell with the horse on an obstacle she had to jump and was trapped under the horse. Blavatsky, whose bones were broken, had to live a life in pain all her life. She never fully recovered. Although she ran away from home, Blavatsky continued to use her husband's surname, and in her youth, she traveled and researched in various parts of the world to learn about different cultures, religions, and esoteric teachings. The year 1951 is very important in this respect. During a trip to London, Blavatsky met her spiritual teacher in her physical body. The person she met was a Mahatma. Mahatma means great supreme spirit in Sanskrit. According to Theosophy, spiritually elevated, masterful people are called Mahatmas. They are often referred to as Mahatmas, Masters, and the Great White Brotherhood. Since Mahatmas have completed the process of reincarnation, they are known as beings who have reached their highest level, great sages. Mahatmas, who live in countries such as Tibet and India, are said to be able to be anywhere they want in their astral form, even though they live physically in these countries. One example is Gandhi, the spiritual leader of the Indian independence movement. All over the country, Gandhi is called Mahatma, the Great Spirit. Is it out of respect and love, or because he was truly a spiritual leader? We leave the interpretation to you. After meeting her mentor in London, Blavatsky was given a great task by Master Mahatma Maurya. According to the Mahatma teachings, the great task given to her is as follows. Madame Blavatsky will undergo a spiritual training in Tibet for 3 years, after which she will be allowed access to some of the divine knowledge, and then a theosophical society will be established under her leadership. The teachings of the Mahatma constitute the main principles of the society. We are getting closer and closer to the lost kingdom of Shambhala. According to the teachings of the Mahatmas, Shambhala is the last surviving city of the lost civilization of Atlantis. It is said that a mystical knowledge center responsible for the spiritual evolution of humanity is still active here, and that some people still communicate with this knowledge center today. The two great masters of the Great White Brotherhood, Mahatma Maurya and Mahatma Kuthumi, exchanged letters with British statesmen in the late 19th century, and these letters were even delivered to the British government by Madame Blavatsky herself. These letters have been on display in the British Museum in England since 1939. It has been claimed that Blavatsky acted under the patronage and guidance of the Mahatmas throughout her life from this encounter, and that she received all her knowledge from these masters. After this encounter in London, Blavatsky went to America and spent a year there. In New Orleans, she spent some time among the members of the Voodoo religion. Blavatsky then traveled to India in 1852 to meet her spiritual master. From there, she wanted to pass through Tibet, but the region was very chaotic at the time due to the Chinese occupation of Tibet. For this reason, he failed. In 1855, guided by a Tatar shaman, they managed to enter Tibet through Kashmir and Ladakh, but they could not advance very far into the interior of Tibet. Blavatsky was very impressed by the trance ability of her guide, the shaman. After this failed attempt, Madame Blavatsky returned to India and then to Europe. After spending a few years in European cities, she returns to Russia, to the land of her birth, to her relatives. As described in her autobiography, her relatives claimed that Blavatsky had psychic powers since her childhood. Her relatives also claimed that Madame Blavatsky, who returned to her country in 1858, had further developed these powers, and that she possessed some of the powers associated with mediumship at the time. Strange noises, rattling, whispering, unexplained events, and the displacement of objects were observed in the places where Blavatsky was present. Between 1867 and 1870, Madame Blavatsky returned to India and Tibet. In the 3 years she spent here, it is claimed that she was educated by the Mahatmas, who were her masters, and that she acquired her theosophical knowledge during this period. Then she returned to Europe again. Thus, he traveled around the world twice. In 1870, the ship she was traveling on sank while crossing from Greece to Egypt. Blavatsky was one of the few survivors of this accident. In 1871, she engages in important activities in Cairo. She conducts psychic experiments and practices based on the theories of Allan Kardec. Allan Kardec is the author of the Book of Mediums and the founder of experimental spiritualism. Helena founded a society called the Spiritist Society. An advertisement in a newspaper at the time reads exactly as follows: "A society of spiritists has been founded in Cairo under the direction of Madame Blavatsky, with the mediums assisting her. There will be 2 meetings a week. Only members can attend the meetings. Our aim is to be together under the roof of this society and to establish a reading room and a library on spiritualism and other fields." However, these efforts did not yield any results. Madame Blavatsky claimed that the psychics she worked with had defrauded her and closed the society. After this unsuccessful attempt, Blavatsky returned to her native Russia, then went to Paris and then to America in 1873. She made a name for herself by participating in various seances with the psychics she met. Afterwards, leaving Spiritism behind, she founded the Theosophical Society and settled in India with Henry Steele Olcott, who would later become her companion. Thus, the center of the Theosophical Society also moved to India. Blavatsky wrote various books based on the experiences she gained in various countries of the world, the knowledge she learned from her mentors, the Master Mahatmas, and the secrets she read in the ancient manuscripts in Tibet. And in these books, he wrote a lot about Shambhala, which is described as the city of gods that we are also searching for. His most famous book is The Secret Doctrine. Although Blavatsky was not the first person to mention this mysterious lost kingdom, she was the one who made it known in the world and caused almost all countries to search for this place. In The Secret Doctrine, Madame Blavatsky talks about our ancient ancestors who lived on Earth and still live in Shambhala. According to Blavatsky, there are 7 root lineages that have lived on Earth. She explains that 5 of these lineages have existed on Earth, but the time for the last 2 has not yet come. Some of these races existed in places that are now called lost, such as Lemuria, the continent of Mu, or the lost continent of Atlantis. According to Blavatsky, the 7 root races are: First root race, astral etheric. This species did not have a physical body, it had more of a spiritual appearance. They were composed of etheric energy. Etheric is the purest energy field of the physical body. They reproduced by dividing and multiplying like amoebas. At this time, the world was still in the cooling phase. Second root race, Hyperborean. Hyperborean is a generic name given in ancient Greek mythology to the region where the north winds come from and the people who live there. This region is also described as a place where the sun's rays do not reach. This race lived in the area called Hyperborea, which today includes northern Canada, Greenland, Iceland, Scandinavia, northern Asia, and Kamchatka in northern Russia. Since the region they lived in received very little sunlight, this race is described as having long blonde hair, blue eyes, and white skin, but they are not depicted with a complete physical body. This race lived a very long life and reproduced by vaccination. The Hyperborean race has also completely disappeared, and no one of their descendants has survived. Third root race, Lemurians. The Lemurians were the first race to exist with a physical body, and they lived on the lost continent of Lemuria. Described as a black race of three-eyed giants, the Lemurians were very tall. They were described as a very superior advanced civilization. The Lemurian continent is believed to have existed in the region where the Indian and Pacific Oceans are located today. It has been suggested that the last remnants of the continent are present-day Australia and Madagascar. It is claimed that the continent gradually sank into the water and was completely destroyed by massive volcanic eruptions that followed. Fourth root race, Atlanteans. According to theosophical teachings, the Atlanteans are a descendant of their ancestors, the Lemurians, and were first proposed to have existed in Africa 4.5 billion years ago. It is said that after the early Atlanteans flourished in Africa, they migrated to the Atlantean continent and built a very superior civilization like their ancestors, the Lemurians. Like their ancestors, the Atlantean continent was submerged in the waters and disappeared. The myth of the lost continent of Atlantis is much talked about even today, and the search for it still continues. The Atlantean root race has Mongolian characteristics and is divided into 7 sub-races. These sub-races consist of civilizations such as Phoenicians, Akkadians, Native Americans, and Mongols. Fifth root race, Aryans. Aryans, the fifth race according to Blavatsky, is the name given to modern-day humans. According to theosophists, the Aryans existed as a continuation of their ancestors, the Atlanteans. Madame Blavatsky means that the Aryan root race is 1 million years old, or more precisely, that the incarnation cycles began 1 million years ago in the bodies of the Atlanteans, after which the first Aryans were born incarnate. It is believed that the Aryans, humans, were physically generated by Vaivasvatu Manu, the masters of ancient wisdom. The Aryan nomads migrated to an island called the White Island. This area, which was an inland sea, is now the Gobi Desert. Here they founded the Bridge City. It is claimed that the early Aryans built this city directly under Shambhala, which is what we are after. The 6th and 7th root races have not yet come to Earth. The subject of these races is a topic in itself. In fact, we will examine it together in another video. Now let us return to our topic. The reason for these details is that Blavatsky believes that our ancient ancestors still exist in this mysterious city, Shambhala. Madame Blavatsky says that those who live in Shambhala are far beyond us. She states that only those who are free from evil, who can reach the purest and unpolluted level of the subconscious mind, and thus make the spiritual inner journey, can enter there. According to Blavatsky, we lost this quality millions of years ago. Our ancestors, the Lemurian and Atlantean races, had a pure and unpolluted soul. They were very advanced civilizations. They were technologically very advanced. They could communicate with each other telepathically. Therefore, by using their telepathic properties, they were able to connect to the Universal Information Center and gain unlimited access to all the secrets of the universe. This enabled their society to be a highly advanced society. According to Blavatsky, Aryans, that is, we humans, also have this feature. But we are far removed from the pure energy needed to utilize these traits. If these assumptions are correct, we have to face the fact that as long as there are wars, human inequalities, societies devoid of empathy, and our desire to retain absolute power, we will never regain these traits. What do you think? Yes, throughout history, researchers, historians, scientists, and conspiracy theorists have said many things about the mysterious lost city. Okay, let's say such a place exists. And one day we actually find Shambhala. But what awaits us there? There is talk of a doorway to another dimension, somewhere unknown in the Himalayas, high up in the mountains. If you manage to find and pass through that door, you will be greeted by the unparalleled beauty of Shambhala, the city of kings. The holy translucent faces that suddenly appear in front of you, the fiery inscriptions on the walls of the city, the beams of light that cover the entire kingdom, and the huge, incredible, and magical structures make you forget where you are. The Hidden Kingdom has many more amazing features. For example, ancient Indian scriptures speak of flying chariots, stone horses powered by the wind, or stone airplanes. Some of the living lamas claim that these stone horses are flying vehicles made with very advanced technology. Tibetan religious texts describe in detail the physical structure of the secret city. The Shambhala consists of 8 regions, each surrounded by a ring of mountains. The region is therefore thought to resemble the bud of a lotus flower with 8 petals. In the center of the innermost ring is the capital city of Kalapa, where there are many buildings made of precious stones such as gold, diamonds, coral, and the king's palace. The capital is surrounded by mountains of ice that emit a crystalline beam of light. Shambhala's technology is believed to be extremely advanced. The palace has special so-called skylights, windows with lenses that function as high-powered telescopes for studying extraterrestrials. For centuries, the Shambhala people have used airplanes and vehicles that move through a network of underground tunnels. The inhabitants have acquired telepathic communication abilities, mediumship, the ability to move at great speeds, to shift into physical or astral form at will, and to disappear from sight. In fact, the book, The People's Almanac, which gives an interesting perspective on historical and cultural events, famous people, important information from popular culture, and many other topics, says, the Shambhala prophecies mention that each of the kings will rule the city for 100 years, making a total of 32 kings. As each king's reign comes to an end, conditions in the world will deteriorate further until the next king will save the world by leading a war against evil. What do you think about these claims? Tibetan monks say that mankind is not ready. According to the religious texts, the monks say that everything in the world is happening as written in the Shambhala prophecy. They say that every event that will happen is predetermined, but they do not give any information about what will happen. This is because they believe that human beings cannot cope with the information contained in Shambhala, and that it is nobody's business. This is all that is known about the prophecy. The degradation of Buddhism in Tibet, the incredible amount of materialism, carelessness, wars, and turmoil in the 21st century. If true, most of the prophecies have come true. However, here is the reality. We know very little about the Shambhala prophecy. According to legends, this secret kingdom has its guardians. Shambhala is said to have a very strong barrier of protection from the outside world, beings with psychic powers that Tibetans call snow keepers or black men. A British major who was camping in the Himalayas in the early 1900s described an incident in his notes as follows. I saw a very tall man wearing light clothing and long blonde hair. As soon as he realized he had been seen, he ran down a steep slope and disappeared. The major said that after this strange incident, he told the Tibetans he was camping with about what he had seen, but they showed no sign of surprise. The Tibetan guides told the major that this man was one of the black men who guarded the sacred site of Shambhala. Where did these black men come from, you ask? There are other examples. French explorer and traveler Alexandra David Neal, originally an opera singer but who spent 14 years in Tibet, where she became known as the first female guru of the East. Neal was also the first Westerner to enter the forbidden Tibetan city of Lhasa and the Potala, the palace of the Dalai Lama. After spending 14 years in this mystical land, Alexandra David Neal returned to France and published a book called Magic and Mystery in Tibet. Neal shared very interesting information about the region in her book. In one of his many trips to the Himalayas, Neal said that he saw a man moving at an unusual speed and described his extraordinary experience as follows. I clearly saw his face, which was extremely calm and indifferent to his surroundings. His eyes were wide open and staring fixedly at an invisible object above in space. The man was not running. It was as if he was lifting himself off the ground and leaping forward. He seemed to have incredible flexibility and jumped every time his feet touched the ground. There was always a pattern to his steps. In her book, Alexandra David Neal stated that everything the Tibetan lamas told her was absolutely true. Neal is said to have known the location of Shambhala, but deliberately withheld this information because she was a member of the Theosophical Society founded by Madame Blavatsky. It seems that it was not only the Tibetan monks and the local righteous who withheld information about Shambhala. This is also the case with those who later learned these secrets. Then we ask, what kind of a reality did they face that they didn't share it with anyone after they reached the information they had been chasing for years? Don't you think it's very interesting? The famous writer, Nicholas Roerich, painter, archaeologist, philosopher, and one of the famous theosophists of his time, wrote about his discoveries in Tibet in 1930 under the title Shambhala. Roerich traveled to Tibet, the Altai Mountains, and Mongolia in 1924 and described Shambhala as an important city in the very center of Agartha, connected to all parts of the world by underground tunnels. According to Nicholas Roerich, the Theosophists knew the location of the hidden city, but they kept it a secret. Roerich, who devoted his whole life to Shambhala and spent his life on this path, has been a subject of curiosity as to whether he has found the location of the Lost Kingdom. Perhaps Roerich, too, knew the location of the Lost Kingdom, but chose to hide this fact. Nicholas Roerich described his conversation with a lama as follows. The lama says that the great Shambhala is far away, behind the waters, that it does not exist in the world, that he does not understand why the people of the world are so interested in it. Lama says that only those who live in the Far East have a special aura of energy, and only they can perceive it. As interesting as all this sounds, it is said that those who ventured deep into the Himalayas in search of Shambhala were never heard from again. It is also said that they either froze on the perilous journey or found Shambhala and decided to stay there. Many researchers believe that the Sanskrit language originated from Shambhala. It is also said that there is a monastery close to this area, and many people who go to the monastery are said to undergo a healing process, both spiritually and physically. This monastery was claimed to be the Songzanlin Monastery, located on the Tibetan border today, because the Chinese government later changed the name of this region and called it Shangri-La. Shangri-La is another name for Shambhala. What does it all mean? It's hard to understand, but the mere possibility that such a place might exist is enough to arouse a sense of curiosity about the unknown. In fact, there are independent researchers who claim that Shambhala does not exist in the world. But where is this Shambhala? Although the location of Shambhala varies according to mythological discourses and various researchers, Madame Blavatsky, the founder of the Theosophical Society, wrote in the Karma Purana, an ancient Indian manuscript, that Shambhala is an island in the northern sea. And as we know, the Gobi Desert in the north used to be an inland sea. Isn't that very interesting? Some Buddhists think that Shambhala is located on Earth. Some folk Buddhists, on the other hand, argue that Shambhala is the city of the gods, and therefore a city where the gods dwell can only be in the sky. Some contemporary Tibetans are of a similar view, and therefore think that Shambhala should not be sought on Earth, but among the stars on another planet. These views raise one question. Could Shambhala be outside of time and space, in another dimension, or in a parallel world? Surprisingly, one of NASA's space missions aimed to observe Shambhala from space and find out if such a place exists. The results were not disclosed, but if even NASA is looking for this place, it suggests that such a city might actually exist. Even today in Tibet, there are guides who try to describe the way to Shambhala, but they do so in such an incomprehensible way that it is almost impossible to follow them. The directions usually start from the known parts of Tibet and North India and go to the unknown regions to the north. Each guide takes the traveler to a point and stops, usually at the edge of a cliff or a mountainside. The guide says, "This is the end of the road. You can only go beyond this road by air," and no further explanation is given. Isn't that interesting? You hire a guide, you start a journey into the unknown, you get very excited, you walk for hours hoping to find this hidden city, and what is the result? Frustration. You are told that if you want to find Shambhala, the city of mysteries, you can travel the rest of the way by air. A poem written in 1557 by a Tibetan prince explains this mysterious situation. The great ones will then lift you up on their shoulders with golden music and carry you over the cottony mountain chains. With their miraculous power, you will fly through the air like an umbrella, and even the eagles will be ashamed. What do you think the Tibetan prince wants to say in this poem, written 466 years ago? Could these lines be a coincidence? Do Tibetan guides act according to legends? Or is it that the majority of the people don't want Shambhala to be found and are hiding something? What do you think? Tibetan prophecies speak of the kingdom of Shambhala as follows. One day an evil spirit comes and explains to the barbarians that power does not exist in the world, that there is a country called Shambhala. The barbarians learn that Shambhala exists and go there. But according to the prophecy, a pact is first made between the king of Shambhala, Rudra Chakran, and the barbarians. King Chakran welcomed the extraterrestrials who had come to invade the city and offered their leader to rule together. The king of the barbarians accepts the offer, but soon he tries to take over the sovereignty for himself. They attack Shambhala with flying chariots and a great battle begins in the sky. But the barbarians are not successful, because King Rudra Chakran fights to destroy them and succeeds. It is also said in the Tibetan prophecies that eventually the king will come out of Shambhala and come down to destroy the barbarians. According to this prophecy, King Chakran will descend from the sky. According to some lamas, the king will come to our world from another planet. Jambudvipa, that place, is more than a planet, a continent, or a region. Jambudvipa is everywhere. The king will come from there. After this final battle, the iron wheel will appear and fall in the sky, signaling the beginning of King Rudra Chakran's rule. After the victory, the king will extend his rule to the whole earth, and a new golden age will begin. Priests who hide what they know, monks who don't reveal secrets, locals who say that although strange things are happening, they are natural, travelers who spent years researching the area and spent their lives on this path, and theosophists who found this place but kept the knowledge to themselves. The existence of an unnatural energy in this region is indisputable, but the question of why something is being kept hidden will probably be asked forever. There is no end to the claims and prophecies about the holy city of Shambhala. There is much to tell and much to talk about, but for now, this is the end of this adventure for us.
Why do Buddhist monks shave their heads and wear orange clothes? What secrets do ancient Tibetan monks keep? Why do they stand in the lotus position for hours without moving? What is the significance of the mountain Kailash in Tibet? What is the hidden secrets of Shambhala? In this episode we travel to Tibet, the homeland of the Tibetan people, the roof of the world in Central Asia. Home to the largest mountains in the world, with an average altitude of 4,900 meters, Tibet has been home to an ancient civilization for thousands of years. Buddhists have always sought peace in these mountains, but what did the Nazis look for in Mount Kailash? With high mountains, rivers, fertile soil and rich mineral deposits, Tibet offers a very rich outlook, but the Tibetan monks who live here and stand out with their orange clothes can spend the whole day with a few glasses of water and a slice of bread. The word Buddha, which means to become conscious, to enlighten, to awaken, to realize, in Sanskrit, forms the basis of the thousands of years of philosophy here. This is how the story begins. Legend has it that a monk saw a sick and decaying body with a high fever and decided to find a way out of all this suffering. At the age of 29, when a young man named Siddhartha Buddha gave birth to his only son, he left his son and his wife in the city where they lived, left the city and set out to find a way out of suffering and pain. He sets out with high hopes and spends 6 whole years on the path. For 6 years he wandered like an ascetic in the Ganges Valley, met with famous religious leaders of the time, carefully followed their methods, slept a few hours a day, practiced asceticism, but after a while he realized that these religions and their knowledge were not for his purpose and gave up. He gives up 6 years of labor with a decision he made one night. After giving up what he had learned for 6 years, he began to search for his own path, primarily through meditation techniques. Other religious teachings were too extreme for the 35-year-old Buddha. His own teaching and meditation method is actually a technique for finding the middle way in all kinds of problems. The young Buddha, who is estimated to have been born in 563 BC, becomes famous in the region with his teachings and techniques. He is now a spiritual leader, a wise teacher. His teachings were compiled and written down by his disciples who came together as the Sangha community just before his death. Buddhists are guided by these teachings. The Buddha, who is believed to have died in 483 BC, left behind many secrets. He spent his life searching for the truth between life and death with a calmness that pushed the limits. Immediately after his death he was sanctified, recognized by Buddhists all over the world as the awakened Buddha with great secrets. Buddha is considered sacred in many religions. The Baha'is consider him a prophet, although some Hindu texts accuse him of apostasy. Born in what is now Nepal, Buddha was the son of the king of the Sakya tribe. According to some, the reason for his rebellion was the splendor and extravagance of his father's court ceremonies. So he went into seclusion, leaving behind his home, his children and his wife. A life of plenty and abundance bored him and he went and lived in poverty. Buddha had everything in the palace, next to his father the king. In fact, away from all the problems of the world, he literally had everything. His father wanted him to be king too. He did not allow his son to wander far from the royal palace, lest he see old age, sickness and death on the streets. But the Buddha realized that wealth and luxury brought no happiness, that people suffered and that his previous life was meaningless. Buddhism, which originated in India, is today a religion with more than 500 million followers around the world. It first emerged in India and then spread over time in Southeast and East Asia, in countries such as China, Japan, Korea, Mongolia, Nepal, Sri Lanka, Thailand and Tibet. Believed to explain the sources of pain, suffering and dissatisfaction in life and to show ways to eliminate them, the main framework of Buddhism's teachings is meditation. In these unique moments, Buddhists experiment with methods of introspection. The Tibetan king Srongtsen Khampo, who ascended the throne in Tibet in the 7th century AD, also embraced this religion. Thanks to the king, this belief system spread to the majority of the population. The worship of nature, self-restraint and moral values are the foundations of the Buddhism system. Tibetan Buddhism, according to the grouping of today's scholars, is considered as Northern Buddhism and has believers in many countries, especially Tibet, Mongolia, Bhutan and India. Those who followed in the footsteps of Prince Buddha, those who embraced Buddhism, began to live like him. Tibetan monks who wanted to gain enlightenment and wisdom like the Buddha came to the fore in this teaching. Buddhist monks wear different garments, ranging from the saffron robes worn by monks in Sri Lanka and Thailand and the robes worn by Tibetan lamas to head scarves. The saffron robes worn by monks last for centuries. Buddhists chose orange partly out of necessity. Because orange was the only paint available at the time and they decided to continue using that color. With the exception of Tibetan monks who used burgundy, Buddhist followers in many parts of Southeast Asia stuck with orange and it remains the color of choice today. As a prince raised in a palace, the Buddha actually hated splendor. The robes worn by Buddhists symbolize a detachment from materialism and a bit of ostentation. Monks also shave their hair as a symbol of the separation of simplicity and materialism. The Buddha is thought to have worn a modest robe made of patched clothes donated by people during his lifetime. Many surviving statues, paintings and carvings of the Buddha show him wearing a robe draped loosely over his body, usually with the right side of his shoulder open. However, due to climatic and geographical factors, the robes worn by Mahayana Buddhist monks varied considerably. The monks wore beautifully embroidered silk robes. However, the majority of monks, many of whom came from Japan, China and Korea, wore simpler robes with a simple collar that hung around the neck. For thousands of years, the clothes of Buddhist monks were made according to strict codes that stipulated the smallest details, both sewing and alteration or repair. The monk has only one suit, and any part of it can only be replaced if it has 10 patches. According to some beliefs, orange was chosen as the color that symbolizes the religion of Buddhism because it is the color that carries and attracts the most energy. Let's share one more important fact about orange robes. The original monks obtained their robes from piles of garbage. These monks collect discarded fabrics. After washing the scraps thoroughly, they boil the cloth with herbal substances such as certain leaves, roots and flowers. Spices are also said to be added to give the cloth an orange color. Today, 450 million Buddhists do not practice Buddhism with such strict rules. In some countries, such as Western Europe, America and Australia, a new Buddhist sect, Zen Buddhism, has gained traction in followers. In this fast-growing religious movement, many Buddhists living far from Tibet do not shave their heads. From the outside, Buddhism appears to be a religion of peace, motivation and serenity, but Buddhist monks are devoted to their religion, excluding themselves from worldly affairs and not believing in the lies of life. The reason why they shave their hair is because they want to keep a low profile. The Buddhist code of ethics has 5 basic principles. They include refraining from taking life, not stealing, refraining from sexual misconduct, refraining from lying, and abstaining from intoxicants. Accepting the 5 precepts is part of both joining Buddhism and practicing Buddhist devotion. The precepts are not designed as mandatory commandments to be followed, but rather as educational rules to be accepted and followed voluntarily by the people, making it easier to practice. Tibetan monks, whom we have seen in many historical fiction films, became popular through cinema. Their fame, which spread around the world through cinema, brought them an even greater commitment to Buddhist philosophy. As they became famous, they never left the road. Tibetan Buddhist monks, who became the subject of research as their fame grew, were the focus of some scientific studies. They were found to have abilities that went beyond normal parameters. Herbert Benson was a cardiologist and a renowned professor of medicine at Harvard University. In the 1960s he spent a lot of time studying Eastern cultures. The timing was good because the subject was of concern to some people at the time. So he waited until midnight to take 36 Tibetan monks into his laboratory. Benson wanted to see for himself how much myth and how much reality there was in the stories people told about Tibetan monks. But beyond that, abstract meditators were seen as possessing superhuman qualities. After all, Benson was a scientist, and he didn't believe in anything that science couldn't prove. What he discovered that night changed his life forever. In fact, 3 years later, he wrote a book that later became a bestseller. It's called The Relaxation Response. When it became a bestseller, he created an alternative form of medicine. He was someone who said that faith can be cured because the placebo effect has a high healing power. What Herbert Benson and his team found was that Tibetan monks had abilities that contradicted science. For example, a group of Tibetan monks practicing yoga with the Tummo technique could lower the temperature of their hands and feet by as much as 17 degrees. So far, no scientific explanation for this phenomenon has been found, but Harvard Gazette investigated this and several subsequent experiments. Tibetan monks can allegedly raise their body temperature to the point of drying a wet sheet with their bodies. Not only that, Benson also found that advanced meditators using the Sikkim technique can slow their metabolism by up to 64%. According to research, Tibetan monks were experts in having the dreams they wanted, deep dreaming and waking consciousness. In 1971, Daniel Goleman, the creator of the concept of multiple intelligences, wrote an article. It suggested that the monks may have had a fifth state of consciousness. The research made Tibetan monks increasingly popular. Those who exaggerated the situation even claimed that Tibetan yogis and monks could remain motionless and levitate for several hours. But no evidence has ever been found that this is true. Research has shown that Tibetan monks can produce the same brain waves in sleep as when they wake up. It was also claimed that one Tibetan monk's heart voluntarily stopped pumping blood for 17 seconds without stopping beating. Although the research was widely exaggerated in some media outlets, the Tibetan monks went on with their lives. Their fame, which quickly spread to the modern world, and blockbuster movies did not deter them from the lotus position. So what was the secret behind their meditation in the lotus position? Buddhists are truly intriguing with their teachings, thoughts, and lifestyle. Robert Piper, who has been interested in meditation for many years and received serious training on this subject, lived with Buddhist monks in Asia for nearly 9.5 years. Piper shared what he learned and experienced in his writings. The most important lesson he learned was to try something many times before giving up. The monk said that if success is not achieved after several attempts, then the perspective and approach to the situation needs to be changed. The men in orange have this outlook on life: if you don't stop trying, you will eventually get to where you want to be. Tibetan monks spend most of their time in prayer and meditation, and it is impossible to go on a tourist trip and learn their secrets directly. Tibetan monks live in closed monasteries and don't talk much to earthlings. But sometimes travelers manage to settle as guests in the monastery and observe the monks' way of life. Tibetan monks start and end the day with prayer. Monks play sports, work, eat right, do not get angry or swear. The pomp and extravagance that Buddha rebelled against while living in the palace is also the rebellion of Tibetan monks today. Tibetan monks always diet, do not overeat, follow the rule of separate meals, do not mix proteins and carbohydrates, and eat slowly and in small portions. Written sources say that Tibetan monks did not eat meat and preferred only plant foods, as well as butter, cheese, dairy products, and eggs. Is it possible to live long with such a system? There is also a secret hidden in the lotus pose of Tibetan monks, who ate healthy and withdrew from worldly affairs, which spread all over the world. Do not do this movement without the help of an expert. We will talk about the benefits of the lotus position in a moment. First, let's talk about the lotus position technique step by step. Sit on the floor with your legs straight. Bend your right knee and pull it towards you, and place the right ankle on the left groin with the help of your hand. The sole of the foot should point upwards as much as possible. Place your foot firmly on the groin line. Bend the left knee in the same way, pull it towards you, and place the left ankle crossed over the right groin. The sole of the foot should point upwards. Place your foot firmly on the groin line. If you cannot, place it diagonally on the floor and do not force it. Place your hands on your thighs with the thumb and index finger together, palms facing upwards. Let yourself flow in a calm and peaceful way, relax and begin to breathe in and out naturally through the nose. Keeping your eyes closed will help you move more quickly into the state you want to enter, but it is not essential. The lotus pose is an excellent pose, but not everyone can do it on the first try, and this is normal. People who are used to it can use it in their daily meditation, but beginners should use the one that suits them and doesn't strain their knees. At first it is enough to stay in lotus for a few seconds. Lotus is also a double-sided pose. In your practice, work with both legs alternately. Add a few seconds to your sitting time each week. It is best to work with the support of a yoga or meditation instructor. Let's talk about the benefits of the lotus position. Buddha practiced this sitting thousands of years ago to relax his mind. Lotus sitting is believed to open the body's energy channels, the chakras. It improves the flexibility of your hips, knees, and ankles. It allows you to stand more upright, straightens your spine. Improves your posture. It is good against sciatica and menstrual irregularities. Ancient scriptures mention that the lotus pose eliminates all diseases. Lotus is physically a concept in the life of Buddhists. But what about Mount Kailash? Mount Kailash in Tibet has a significance. Mount Kailash is the mountain that forms part of the Trans-Himalaya in southwest Tibet. Mount Kailash is considered sacred in Bon, Buddhism, Hinduism, and Jainism. There is a mystery that this mountain has never been conquered. Is it the Indus, Brahmaputra, Sutlej, and Karnali rivers located near Kailash that add mystery to this mountain? Or is it because, according to Hinduism, Kailash is the home of the god Shiva and his wife? At 6,714 meters high, Mount Kailash is covered in snow every day of the year. That's why in Tibetan, it is called the snow jewel. According to Buddhist belief, Kailash is a mountain that forms the axis of the earth. To purify their souls, followers of Buddhism, Hindu, Jain, and Bon religions circumambulate Mount Kailash. Buddhists who come to Mount Kailash in Tibet immediately crawl on the ground. Standing is forbidden. Those who pray on the one hand and crawl to the monastery inside the mountain on the other hand fulfill a kind of pilgrimage. Buddhists have always sought peace on this mountain, but what did the Nazis seek on Mount Kailash? In the 1930s, Nazi leaders began exploring Tibet, searching for ancient mythological and religious beliefs there. One of the reasons for this was to explore and discover the origin of the Aryans, which was part of the Nazis' racist ideas. The Aryan race means the superior race. According to the Nazis, Germans were descended from the Aryan race. Of course, this was not the only reason the Nazis were in Tibet. The Nazis also searched for a long time for Shambhala, the legendary lost city of kings. Shambhala is a secret city that is claimed to exist in some traditional Tibetan Buddhist teachings and other mystical beliefs. According to these beliefs, Shambhala is located in Tibet or the Himalayas and contains important secrets of higher wisdom, divine knowledge, and the salvation of humanity. The discovery of these secrets has intrigued many people. Of course, it was also of interest to Nazi Germany, which wanted to gain the upper hand in the war. Evidence of the Nazis' quest is provided by their expeditions in Tibet and the Himalayas in the 1930s. These expeditions aimed to strengthen Germany's links with Tibet and to conduct scientific research. However, according to some sources, Nazi leaders searched for Shambhala during these expeditions. According to some researchers, an even more interesting claim has been made. The Nazis lost the Battle of Stalingrad in 1943. The interesting thing is that, according to Hitler, the reason for this defeat was that Shambhala could not be found and the divine knowledge within it could not be accessed. Moreover, some sources claim that the SS organization collaborated with monks in Tibet to gather information about Shambhala. The subject of the lost city of Shambhala is a very deep subject that goes back to the origin of the human races. We will do a detailed study on this subject in the future. Let us continue with our topic. Some scientists claim that Mount Kailash is not a mountain but a giant pyramid. All other small mountains are red pyramids, so it turns out that this is a real pyramid system, much larger than any mountain we have ever known. Indeed, Mount Kailash looks very much like a big pyramid. Do you think Mount Kailash is a pyramid from ancient times? We are waiting for your comments. When the Russians built a facility to explore space on this mountain, the attention of the world's intelligence services turned to this mountain. In fact, the rumors spread so much that the claim that there is a tunnel in this mountain that can travel in time has also spread from ear to ear. The time tunnel near Kailash was confirmed but not proven by many monks and Buddhists. Following the rumors, a group of researchers who went to Kailash approached the mountain and started making Kora. Kora is a sacred walk around the entire mountain. Those who do the Kora are believed to be completely cleansed of the bad karma accumulated throughout life. Thus, in about 12 hours, all the participants in the Kora aged as if 2 weeks had passed. Hard to believe but true. In just 12 hours of walking, the beards and fingernails of all the participants grew incredibly long. This has led to a mystery of biological activity on Mount Kailash. Was the rapid growth of beards and nails a sign of time travel? Mount Kailash is estimated to be at least 20,000 years old. According to the religions that worship the mountain, touching its slopes with your foot is an unforgivable sin. It is said that many who tried to break this taboo died as soon as they set foot on the mountain. The mysteries and secrets of Mount Kailash do not end. What kind of mysteries are there inside the mountain? According to another claim, there are eternal resting places inside the mountain connected by tunnels. The most important people in human history, prophets, scientists, important thinkers are waiting in the lotus position inside the mountain. It is even said that examples of all the races that have lived throughout human history are in the caves inside this mountain. It is also claimed that when the day comes, these bodies, which are believed to be in a meditative state in the lotus position, will wake up from deep sleep so that the human race can continue. Sounds crazy, doesn't it? Do you think these claims could be true? Could Tibetan monks actually know the whole truth? What are their secrets and what steps would humanity have to go through to access these secrets? These questions have been asked for thousands of years and will probably not be answered anytime soon. So, what are the secrets of the monks who enter a state of meditation and are found years later with their bodies intact? The mummified remains of a meditating monk in Mongolia's Sanjinakerkan province were found about to be sold on the black market, with some experts claiming that he was not actually dead and was very close to becoming a Buddha. The 200-year-old, perfectly preserved remains are still under forensic investigation. One expert insisted that the mummy was actually still in deep meditation and in a very rare and special spiritual state called tukdam. This means that the mummy is not dead and is one step away from becoming a real Buddha. There is also strong evidence that there have been many similar events in past history. A Buddhist monk named Dorzo Atijalov lived from 1852 to 1927. According to legend, a few seconds before he died, the monk called his students to him and announced that he was dying. He invited his students to meditate together and willed that his body be buried the way he died, to be exhumed 30 years after his death. He takes the lotus position and dies in meditation. Atijalov was buried in the lotus position, just as he had willed. Only in 2002, 75 years after his death, was his body exhumed. After exhumation, it was observed that his body was perfectly preserved and intact. This caused great astonishment both in the scientific community and among religious leaders. According to Buryat Buddhism, Atijalov's body is a living Lama. Therefore, his body must be treated with special respect. The body of the monk Dorzo Atijalov is still on display in the Buddhist monastery of Ivolginsk Datsan in Buryatia. This monastery is visited as a holy place among Buddhists. In Tibet, temples and caves are still inhabited today by clergy who live in a kind of seclusion. These men, who do not worry about how to pay the bill, how to upgrade the model of the car, where to go for vacation next summer, continue to follow in the footsteps of Buddha in this region. History continues to keep many secrets successfully. What do you think? Would you get rid of all your worries and switch to such a lifestyle? We are waiting for your comments. If you liked our video and want to support our channel, please do not forget to follow, press the like button and share the channel link with your friends. Goodbye and see you in the next video.